Ladies, today's story comes with a massive trigger warning for absolute, unadulterated male audacity. Welcome back to the tea room with Liue. What would you do if you literally took a sword to the chest to save your fiancé's life? But on your wedding night, he lets his runaway ex-girlfriend throw away your literal life support machine. Oh, it gets worse. Our heroine doesn't cry. She quietly gets her affairs in order, ruins the ex's life from beyond the grave, and delivers a mic drop exit that destroys him forever. Let's dive right in, shall we? On the day I was to marry Jo Hwai-jin, my legitimate elder sister, who had fled the marriage 4 years ago, appeared before the bridal sedan with a 3-year-old boy. With tears streaming down her face, she questioned him accusingly. "How long have I been gone that you are already marrying my younger sister? Is this what you call undying devotion? How can you face the child I risked my life to bear for you?" Jo Hwai-jin cast her a cold glance and waved his hand, ordering someone to take her away. At that moment, I watched this scene through the sedan curtain, my heart filled with mixed emotions. I thought he truly no longer cared about my elder sister. But on our wedding night, Jo Hwai-jin never came. The red candles had burned halfway down, and the bronze mirror reflected my bridal gown. The clothes were new, the makeup was new. Yet this marriage from beginning to end was nothing but a substitute bride arrangement. Finally unable to remain calm, I got up and went out. A thin layer of snow had accumulated in the courtyard. It was bitterly cold. The light in the study was still on. I approached, and through the window lattice I saw a scene I wished I hadn't. Jo Hwai-jin sat side by side with my elder sister on the couch, her head leaning on his shoulder, softly weeping. "But in the end, you still married Hengru as your legal wife. What about me and the child?" "Just a concubine's daughter dependent on me, hardly worth mentioning." His voice was indifferent, casual, as if discussing some trivial matter of no importance. A concubine's daughter dependent on him, so that is what I am in his eyes. But he doesn't know. I don't belong here. I am originally a person from another world, my soul lodged in this body, and that red jade pendant around his neck is the last thread of connection between me and this world. As long as I retrieve that jade pendant, I can return my soul to where it came from. But I once willingly stayed. For him, my legitimate elder sister's voice suddenly grew displeased. "What is this thing? It is so cold." She reached out to fiddle with the jade pendant around Jo Hwai-jin's neck, frowning. "Since when did you like wearing these things? Did Hengru give it to you?" Jo Hwai-jin paused. "If you don't like it, just throw it away." Ladies, my jaw was on the floor. Let me give you the cultural context so you understand the sheer magnitude of this betrayal. Hengru is a concubine's daughter in ancient China. That means she is basically treated like the Featheringtons in Bridgerton. Always second best, always an afterthought. She was forced to marry Jo Hwai-jin after her spoiled legitimate older sister pulled a runaway bride routine. For 4 years, Hengru nursed him, loved him, and literally took an assassin's blade to the heart for him. To save her life, a monk bound their hair in a magical jade pendant. The rule was simple. As long as he wears the jade, she lives. If the jade breaks, she dies within 3 days. It is her literal life support machine. So what happens on their wedding night? He completely ghosts her. She walks out into the freezing snow and looks through his study window, only to see him cuddling with the runaway sister, who has suddenly returned with a 3-year-old kid. When the sister whines about the jade pendant, Hwai-jin doesn't say, "Hey, that is keeping my wife alive." To look cool and detached, he just says, "Throw it away." And she tosses it out the window into the snow where it cracks. For my modern ladies, this is the exact equivalent of your husband unplugging your hospital ventilator, so his mistress can plug in her iPhone charger. It is sickening, but Hengru doesn't burst in screaming. She kneels in the snow, picks up the shattered pieces of her own life, and accepts her fate. She realizes he never saw her as a partner, just a convenient placeholder. Before the words even finished, a crimson dot was tossed out from the window, cutting through the night, falling into the snow. My whole body shook, my steps staggering as I walked over. In the expanse of white snow, that red jade pendant was half embedded in the accumulated snow, like a drop of congealed blood. Kneeling down, I held it in my palm. It felt ice cold to the touch, with a thin, long crack already on the pendant's body. I suddenly smiled. This was the jade pendant that had hung around Jo Hwai-jin's neck for 3 years. Inside it contained the ashes of my and his severed hair burned together. Zhou Huijin was originally supposed to be my brother-in-law. 4 years ago, the marriage arrangement between my legitimate elder sister Xu Qingyao and him had long been settled. But on the eve of the wedding, my legitimate elder sister disappeared without a trace, leaving a letter and running away. In his shock and fear, father was deeply afraid of offending the Zhou family, so he sent me, born of a concubine, into the heir apparent's manor to be at their disposal. Back then, Zhou Huijin was extremely furious, drunk for days on end, with a violent temper. I carefully attended to him by his side, figuring out his preferences every day and meticulously preparing meals. Gradually, he could only eat the food I made. Gradually, his gaze finally held me in it. In the 3rd year at the prince's manor, Zhou Huijin was ordered by the court to quell a rebellion at the border, and took me along. During an ambush, someone secretly came at him with a blade. Without time to think, I shielded him with my body. The sharp blade pierced through my chest, and I was unconscious for a whole month. When I woke up, he had lost a lot of weight, his eyes sunken, as if he hadn't closed them for many days. And around his neck was a red jade pendant I had never seen before. "What is this?" I was somewhat surprised. He sat by my bedside holding my hand, his voice low and hoarse. "I went to Qingyun Temple. Master Mingchen said that as long as we take a strand of hair from each of us, burn them to ashes, and place them in this jade pendant, it would save your life." He paused as if holding something back. "It seems the master was right. As long as I wear this jade pendant for a day, it will keep you safe for a day. I will wear it for the rest of my life." At that moment, holding my hand with his head lowered, his eyes held boundless tenderness. After that battle ended, he personally promised that upon our triumphant return to the capital, he would formally welcome me through the door as his princess consort. And because of this affection, I completely gave up on returning to where my soul belonged. That jade pendant, which could have taken me away from this world, I let him wear it close to his body, never once asking for it back, but now he threw it away with his own hands. His promises became light as a feather the moment his legitimate elder sister returned. A night wind swept by, and fine ashes drifted out from the cracked jade pendant, merging into the snow and dissipating completely. Only an empty shell remained. At the same time, a sharp, intense pain came from my heart, as if that blade had stabbed in again. I bent over, barely able to stand. This was a sign of departing from this world. Master Mingchen's words echoed in my ears. "This jade is born from a wish and can bear one death calamity for its wearer. If the jade exists, the person lives. If the jade shatters, the person dies, irreversible." Once the jade pendant shattered, this body would decay and die within 3 days. My life was saved by Zhou Huijin. In the end, it will also die by his hand. How utterly laughable. Clutching the shattered pendant in my palm, I staggered back alone. The night snow fell rustling, covering the footprints behind me. I stumbled back to the courtyard. Batao was startled at the sight. "Madam, why is your complexion so deathly pale? What happened?" With her support, I barely managed to stand steady. It is nothing. Just some pain in my chest." "What, does the young master know? You didn't find him. At this hour, the young master should have come to the room already." I didn't answer. "Madam, you wait here. I'll go find him." She was about to leave immediately, but I stopped her. "He drank too much wine and is resting in the study. No need to disturb him. Just get me a few Maffei pills." Though Batao was full of doubts, she still helped me to the bed and brought the pills for me to take. At this moment, the sound of an announcement came from outside the courtyard. Bai Tao immediately went out and returned shortly after with some relief on her face. "The young master must have been quite drunk. He didn't even know you went there just now. He even sent a servant to make another trip, saying he was afraid the wine smell would bother you, so he is resting in the study first. He is really worried about you." She thought Zhou Huijin was being considerate. I gave a bitter smile and nodded slightly. That night, my heart ached the entire night. Only then did I truly realize I don't have much time left. Once the jade pendant shatters, this body will fail and die within about 3 days. It is really quite laughable when you think about it. Zhou Huijin saved my life, and in the end, I will die by his hand too. The next day, Batao came to wake me early. Normally at this hour, I would have already gotten up to prepare breakfast for Zhou Huijin. But today, struggling to get up, I was a full half-hour late. Struggling to walk to the dining hall entrance, I heard a burst of playful laughter coming from inside. Pushing the door open, I froze completely in place. Xu Qingyao and Zhou Huijin were both there, their faces covered in flour, as if they were kneading dough to make pastries, and beside them there was a little child playing with dough. "Daddy, look at what I made. Does it look good?" The child held up a lopsided dough figure, looking up with a smile. Zhou Huijin opened his mouth several times, seemingly not knowing where to start with his praise, but the affection showing in his eyes didn't seem fake. That kind of gaze made my heart tremble. He clearly loved children very much. Now that he has seen his own flesh and blood, naturally he is even more delighted. What a pity. He and I will never have our own child. Xu Qingyao, seeing his awkward appearance, smiled and linked her arm through his. "What is wrong? Can't even spare a word of praise for your own son. I just feel it is somewhat unreal. It is all my fault for keeping you father and son separated for so long." She lowered her eyes, looking full of regret. "From now on, I'll never leave again. I'll definitely stay by you two's side." Zhou Huijin's lips curved slightly upward as he reached out to wipe the white flour off the tip of her nose. "All right. Hurry and try the dish I made. See if it suits your taste." Xu Qingyao attentively picked up some food with her chopsticks and brought it to his mouth, and he didn't refuse in the slightest. After chewing carefully, he nodded, repeatedly. "Your skills are as good as ever." In that instant, tears filled my eyes, and waves of dull pain came from my chest. Everything from the past flooded into my mind, impossible to shake off. It was me who tasted spoonful by spoonful to figure out his preferences. It was me who got up before dawn every day to prepare meals. But now it seems I was nothing but a thief, stealing away a fleeting moment of happiness. And now I am watching helplessly as I return it all in full. This pain of separation made it almost impossible for me to breathe, but Tao's calling brought me back to my senses. Looking down, I realized I had somehow clenched my fists tight. My nails were deeply embedded in my palms, blood dripping through my fingers onto the ground. "How could you use such force? They're all injured." Bai Tao's eyes reddened with distress, and she glared angrily toward the kitchen. Her outburst also drew the attention of the people inside. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. Just as I was about to take a handkerchief to bandage it, Zhou Huijin had already strode over. "How did you get hurt?" But when he saw the nail marks in my palm, his concerned voice came to an abrupt halt. After a moment of silence, he took the handkerchief and wrapped it around my palm. His movements were gentle, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Xu Qingyao also slowly approached, giving me a gentle smile. "Little sister, long time no see." I really couldn't smile back, only looking toward Zhou Huijin. His expression was calm and unruffled. "Qingyao and I have a child called Brother Sui. I cannot neglect this child." The implication being he also cannot neglect Xu Qingyao. He nodded, without pressing further. "A person about to die. There is no need to fuss over these things anymore. I heard sister has practiced her cooking skills quite well these years, preparing his meals daily from now on. Leave these matters to me. Sister should rest more." Xu Qingyao smiled warmly, then suddenly took my hand. "Come, I've prepared a table of breakfast. Sister, come taste it too." She pulled me inside, but the moment she turned around, the gentleness on her face shattered completely, lowering her voice close to my ear, every word like it was laced with poison. "You concubine, born thing. If you want to save that aunt of yours' life, get lost from the heir's manor as soon as possible. He and I have a child, you can't compete with me." Having said that, she even squeezed hard on the wound under my handkerchief. As a warning, I let out a sharp hiss and yanked my hand back forcefully. But she followed my momentum and staggered to the side, one hand landing precisely in the basin of hot water by the stove. A scream instantly echoed throughout the kitchen. I stood frozen in place. Zhou Huijin and Brother Sui immediately ran over. Mother, Brother Sui was frightened red. Eyed Xu Qingyao endured the pain and gently soothed him, while turning to look at Zhou Huijin with tear-filled eyes. She said nothing, but that aggrieved expression was already enough. Zhou Huijin brought over cool water to apply on her, then looked toward me, that look in his eyes. I didn't know how to describe it. I instinctively spoke. I didn't push her. I know. These two words stunned me. Zhou Huijin came before me, raised his hand, and gently touched my cheek. His voice was very soft, so soft that only I could hear. She has been through 3 years alone with Swear. It has been hard enough for her. Doing this, she just wants me to feel sorry for her. Don't hold it against her. All of this, I owe her. These words stirred mixed feelings in my heart, like knocking over a bottle of 5 flavors all at once. Sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and salty surging up all together. So he saw everything clearly. He knew Xu Qingyao was putting on an act. Knew she deliberately provoked me and framed me. Yet he still chose to stand on her side, not because he didn't believe me, but because he felt he owed her. In that instant, I opened my mouth, but my throat felt blocked by something, unable to make a single sound. Should I cry or should I laugh? I actually couldn't tell anymore. Right at this moment, Swear suddenly rushed over and pushed hard at my waist. It is all your fault. You stole my daddy and hurt my mommy. A 3-year-old child's strength wasn't great, but caught off guard. I staggered back a step and fell to the ground. Zhou Huijin immediately held Swear in his arms, gently wiping away the tears on his face. All right, Daddy, we'll find someone to treat Mother's injuries right away. Swear, don't cry, coaxing softly. He picked up the child and turned to leave. Xu Qingyao was also supported by someone following behind. The backs of the 3 of them truly looked like a happy family. Watching them walk away, tears finally slid down silently. This time I can tell clearly. It is the old wound in my heart that aches. Bai Tao choked with sobs as she helped me up from the ground. Madame accompanied the young lord for a full 4 years. Yet he still thinks of that woman. It is truly not worth it. But it is only the 2nd day after the wedding, madam. How will you get through the days ahead? I curved the corners of my lips slightly. Ahead. What future do I have left? Looking at Batao, I wiped away her tears for her. It is okay, there will always be a way out. I will arrange everything properly. That way, even if I leave, I can have some peace of mind. On the day of returning to my parents' home, Zhou Huijin actually prepared the gifts early in the morning. When getting on the carriage, Swear suddenly threw a tantrum. I want to sit with Daddy and Mommy. I want to sit with Daddy and Mommy. He threw himself into Zhou Huijin's arms, hugging his neck tightly, refusing to let go no matter what. Zhou Huijin chuckled softly, looking at me with some difficulty. Hengru the child is crying and making a fuss. It is fine. I interrupted him and got down from the carriage. I'll take the one behind. Without looking back, I got into the 2nd carriage. Their family of 3, as they wished, sat together. Along the way, Batao hesitated to speak several times, but in the end said nothing. When we arrived at the Xu residence, Father and my legitimate mother were waiting at the entrance early. But not to greet me. When they saw Xu Qingyao holding Sugier's hand as they stepped down from the carriage, they were so happy they couldn't stop smiling. They crowded around the mother and daughter asking after their well-being, as if they were the ones returning home today. Your mother prepared all your favorite foods early this morning, hurry on in. Qingyao lifted her head playfully and ran inside holding Sugier's hand. Zhou Huijin followed behind them with a faint smile on his face. By the time I got off the carriage, everyone had already gone inside. I curled my fingers, then released them when they touched the wound in my palm. Walking into the main hall, everyone looked slightly surprised to see me, as if I shouldn't be here. Zhou Huijin's expression was the most subtle. He walked up to me and lowered his voice. Why were you so slow? I looked at him but didn't answer. During the meal, Father indeed brought up the matter of Suigear. This child is 3 years old this year. He can't go on without a proper surname. How about he takes my Xu family name and be entered into the Xu family genealogy? Though the words were tentative, everyone could hear the underlying meaning. As expected, Zhou Huijin picked up the conversation. Mother-in-law. Swear is the flesh and blood of the Zhou family, so naturally he should take the Zhou surname. Tomorrow I will open the ancestral hall and hold a ceremony. I'll make Qingyao my equal wife, and Swear will be entered into the Zhou family genealogy as a legitimate son. I hope father-in-law and mother-in-law will grant us this. Father laughed heartily, nodding repeatedly. Mother was beaming with joy even more. Xu Qingyao smiled with restraint and reserve, and even glanced at me provocatively in the process. Then she tugged at Zhou Huijin's sleeve and said softly, "This matter, you haven't discussed it with younger sister yet. Younger sister won't disagree, will she?" Zhou Huijin looked at me, just about to speak. I was a cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest to begin with. How could I disagree? I answered for him. Xu Qingyao smiled. "What cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest? Younger sister is being too formal. From now on, we two sisters will support each other. Elder sister won't blame you." I smiled and said nothing, but Zhou Huijin's gaze at me changed, carrying a hint of scrutiny. I paid no attention, stood up and bowed to father, saying I wanted to go see auntie. Though father was displeased, he didn't stop me. Auntie's courtyard was still the same as always, simple yet clean. She had been bedridden with illness for many years, and today, knowing I was coming back, she had propped herself up early to prepare a few small dishes waiting for me. But as soon as she saw my face, the smile on her face instantly froze. "Your face looks so terrible. Has she come back and made things difficult for you again?" I couldn't answer, so I changed the subject. After sitting down, I ate the food that auntie made in big mouthfuls, praising it non-stop, but she couldn't cheer up no matter what. Seeing this, I put down my chopsticks and took out a small wooden box from my chest, handing it to her. "These are the land deeds for several estates along with a token. Auntie, if you have time, please help me check the accounts." "Why don't you go yourself? My legitimate elder sister has returned. How would I have the time?" I paused. "I'll leave Batao behind to help you." Auntie and Batao's expressions changed at the same time, but before they could press me with questions, I smiled reassuringly. With control over the household finances, no matter how much Xu Qingyao jumps around, it won't matter. You must help me this once. My gaze was firm, brooking no refusal. They thought that although I was heartbroken, I had made up my mind to firmly grasp the real power of household management in my own hands. After hesitating repeatedly, they finally nodded. The moment I walked out of Auntie's courtyard, my heart felt like a piece had been hollowed out, aching and trembling. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I feared I would never be able to leave. Early the next morning, I followed the Zhou family elders and arrived at the ancestral hall early. Red silk hung everywhere, full of joy and celebration. Although the ceremony was supposed to be simple, the wedding dress Xu Qingyao wore was extremely luxurious, embroidered with pure gold thread, cloud patterns and phoenix tails, even more exquisite than the wedding dress I wore on my wedding day. Well, she is the one he has been longing for all along. My wedding dress was just an outfit to get through the motions. Before me, the two of them bowed to the elders. Zhou Niansui's name was also solemnly written into the Zhou family genealogy. Suir wore a brand new little robe, grinning as Zhou Huijin lifted him high and caught him steadily, his laughter echoing through the ancestral hall. Watching all this, my vision gradually blurred. All the past scenes came into view, like a revolving lantern, replaying one scene after another. When I first entered the heir's manor, carefully carrying meals through the long corridor. When he got drunk and angry, I silently cleaned up the shattered pieces all over the floor. The first time he tasted the lotus seed soup I made, he frowned, then added another spoonful. Outside the military tent at the border, he taught me to recognize the northern stars. When that blade pierced my heart, the last thing I saw was his figure lunging toward me. After waking up, he had lost a lot of weight, and there was a red jade pendant around his neck. Scene after scene, surging in like tide, then receding like tide. In the end, everything descended into darkness. When I regained consciousness, I found myself actually floating in midair. Looking down, that body in the chair had already tilted its head, eyes quietly closed, face pale as paper, lips completely bloodless, as if asleep, but no one noticed. Everyone's gaze was on the perfect couple in front. At this moment, Zhou Huijin turned around, facing the crowd in the hall, and spoke. "Qingyao and I do have a child after all, and brother Sui is also my legitimate son, so from now on Qingyao will be my principal wife." He paused, his gaze turning in my direction. "As for Hengru, she shall be the second wife." As the words fell, everyone looked toward me. Zhou Huijin waved his hand, ordering someone to bring up a cup of tea. Hengru offered Qingyao a cup of tea. "From now on, you two sisters must live in harmony and must not harbor resentment against each other, lest outsiders laugh at us." A cup of tea was brought before me, but that body showed no reaction. Zhou Huijin frowned. Hengru. Xu Qingyao glanced over and laughed lightly. Oh my, has she fallen asleep on such a joyous day? Little sister is putting on airs. A few chuckles rang out around us. Zhou Huijin's face darkened. He strode forward and pushed on my shoulder. But before the words could leave his mouth, that body slumped limply from the chair, silently collapsing to the ground. If you are going to make an exit from a toxic relationship, ladies, this is how you do it. Hengru knows she only has 3 days to live. Does she spend them crying in bed? Absolutely not. She goes into full CEO mode. She secures her aunt's financial future by handing over the deeds to her secret estates. She leaves her loyal maid behind as a secret agent to gather evidence on the sisters' shady past. She secures the bag for her girls before she clocks out. Then comes the day of the ancestral ceremony. Huijin has decided to make the runaway sister his principal wife because she supposedly gave him a son. He publicly demotes Hengru to a secondary wife. He looks at Hengru, who is sitting there pale and silent, and orders her to serve tea to the woman who stole her husband and broke her life, saving Jade. And, right at that exact moment of peak humiliation, Hengru's soul leaves her body. She just drops dead in front of the entire aristocratic family. It is the ultimate "I am so done with your trashes" moment. She doesn't give them the satisfaction of a fight. She doesn't give him the chance to explain. She turns his joyous wedding ceremony into a literal crime scene. When Huijin picks her up and realizes she has no pulse, and then sees her old sword wound bleeding through her dress, the reality hits him. He killed her. He threw away the jade, and he killed the only woman who ever truly loved him. Karma just entered the chat, and she is wearing a black dress. The entire hall was shocked. What has happened? She was fine just a moment ago. Could it be she fainted from anger? Several maidservants tried to help me up. One of them reached for my wrist, suddenly cried out in alarm, and abruptly let go. The second madam has no pulse. A deathly silence. Then it exploded into chaos with a buzz. Zhou Huijin rushed forward and pushed the maid aside. What nonsense are you spouting? Then he bent down, scooped me up horizontally, and strode toward the inner chamber. A group of people followed behind. Their expressions varied, some curious, some puzzled, and some barely concealing their dismissiveness. The legitimate mother held Xu Qingyao's hand, craning her neck to look at the bed, and said in a mocking tone, "This Hengru's temper is way too big," seeing Qingyao complete the ceremony with the air. She actually fainted from anger like this. Truly an eye-opener for me. Hearing this, those around also chimed in one after another. To cause such a scene on such a joyous day, truly disgraceful. What has she got to be angry about? The Zhou family's heir can't just be left outside, can he? Being so jealous, truly lacking in decorum. Exactly, a concubine, born one. Amidst all this chatter, Zhou Huijin turned a deaf ear. He placed me on the bed, continuously calling out in a low voice, "Hengru, Hengru." After discovering I truly had no reaction whatsoever, he reached out his hand to check my breathing. As his fingertips drew near, his entire body suddenly froze. His outstretched hand began to tremble incessantly. The noisy sounds in my ears suddenly became especially jarring. "Hengru! Xu Hengru!" His eyes turned red instantly as he kept shaking my body, as if just using a bit more force would make me open my eyes. But that body didn't move at all. The face was peaceful, as if asleep, only never to wake again. All of this came into view, floating above. I could see it crystal clear, but strangely enough, it couldn't stir up even the slightest emotion. No sorrow, no joy, no resentment, no hatred. Just some confusion. Why would he be so heartbroken? After all, in his words, I was just a concubine's daughter dependent on him. His roar made everyone in the room fall silent. Xu Qingyao was the first to react, hurrying forward. "What happened to little sister?" Zhou Huijin didn't answer. He picked me up again, his movements extremely gentle and slow, as if afraid of breaking something. "Everyone move aside. Chang Yin, take my token to the palace and fetch the imperial physician." With that said, he carried me and headed out, leaving behind a room full of people exchanging bewildered glances, carrying me back to the courtyard where I lived. Passing through a corner. The laughter and chatter of several women came from a pavilion not far away, sharp and piercing, without any concealment. Just because the heir didn't go to her room on their wedding night. The next day her face was so long, I almost couldn't hold back my laughter standing nearby. That is nothing. I know something else. These past few days she has been so miserable she can't swallow a single bite of rice, getting by all day just drinking water. Even so, the heir hasn't given her a single glance. TSK, truly karmic retribution. Exactly, as soon as her sister came back, she got knocked back to her original place. After all, that lady does have a child with our heir from now on. We just need to please the first lady, who cares about her. Let's see how she puts on airs as the mistress of the house from now on. Hearing these words, Zhou Huijin's footsteps suddenly froze in place. He held me in his arms, head lowered. No one saw his eyes gloomy as a deep frozen pond in the 12th lunar month slap their mouths. His voice wasn't loud, but crystal clear. Then he took another step, leaving behind a sentence. Beat them until they can't utter another word. Those several maids in the pavilion were still covering their mouths giggling, completely unaware that disaster had arrived. Only when they saw the guards approaching did the laughter freeze at the corners of their mouths. By the time they wanted to kneel and beg for mercy, it was already too late. When Zhou Huijin stepped into my courtyard, he only then realized the furnishings inside had long since completely changed. He could no longer remember just how long it had been since he last set foot here. Gently placing me on the bed, he tightly gripped my hand. In both eyes, there was still bewilderment and disbelief, unable to believe that I had stopped breathing. Looking at my pale and quiet face, his tears suddenly slid down. How could this happen? How could this happen? He turned to look at the attendants behind him and asked sternly, "Where is Batao? Engru had such a serious incident. Why isn't she here?" Sister Batao was kept at the Shu residence by Madam. She is not at the manor. Zhou Huijin frowned. Kept at the Shu residence? While pondering, his gaze suddenly fell on my chest. A patch of dark red seeped through the front of my robe, slowly spreading. This scene made Zhou Huijin's whole body tremble. He instantly recalled that day, in that military tent at the border. Back then, I also lay motionless like this, face deathly pale, the blood on my chest spreading endlessly. He knelt by the bed for a day and night, his robe covered entirely in my blood. Hangru. He had everyone withdraw and carefully examined the wound. What met his eyes made his breathing feel like it was being clutched by someone. The old wound on my chest had festered, blood continuously gushing out, exactly the same as when struck by the sword that day. His throat choked up, unable to speak for a long while. Just at this moment, the imperial physician hurriedly arrived. Zhou Huijin immediately gave up his position and stepped aside. As he got up, his body weakened, nearly losing his balance, just in time to be supported by Shu Qingyao, who had rushed over. Shu Qingyao held him up while putting on a sorrowful expression, forcing out a couple of sobs. "Husband, what is wrong with younger sister?" Zhou Huijin didn't answer. He looked at the bright red, luxurious wedding dress Shu Qingyao was wearing. Only feeling his head splitting with pain, he forced himself to stand steady and gently pushed her away. "Go change out of your wedding dress, huh? But we haven't drunk the nuptial wine yet." Zhou Huijin gave her a cold glance, anger surging in his chest. "Engru is in this condition, and you are still thinking about drinking the nuptial wine." His voice wasn't loud, but it was like a basin of ice water poured over her head. Shu Qingyao was so frightened she shrank her shoulders, about to explain something. The imperial physician walked out from inside, his expression grave. He bowed in salute. "Young master madam has passed away." Before Zhou Huijin could speak, Shu Qingyao cried out in shock. "What, Hengru is dead?" In her tone was a trace of cheerfulness that couldn't be hidden no matter what. This trace of cheerfulness, to Zhou Huijin's ears at this moment, was especially grating. He slowly turned his head. His eyes were as deep as a dry well, dark and bottomless. "Say that again." His voice was not loud, even calm, but Shu Qingyao was so frightened by those eyes that she retreated half a step. I was just too shocked. My sister was perfectly fine. How could she just go like that? She lowered her head and hurriedly wiped away her tears. Zhou Huijin no longer looked at her. "These few days, stay properly in your courtyard. No need to come out." Shu Qingyao was astonished and just about to speak in protest. Zhou Huijin had already turned around and followed the imperial physician inside. By now the blood at my chest had already stopped. A body without a pulse would no longer produce new blood flow. Me whole body was even paler, like a porcelain doll. He didn't dare look closely again. He only asked, "How did Hengru die?" The imperial physician deliberated again and again, then said, "That sword wound from before was too deep, piercing into the heart meridian. Being able to survive was already a miracle. Now this, it should be the old injury relapsing, the heart meridian suddenly rupturing. A miracle," Zhou Huaijin murmured, and repeated these two words. In his mind, the voice of Master Mingchen from Qingyun Temple suddenly emerged. This jade is born from a wish and can bear one death tribulation for its wearer. When the jade exists, the person exists. When the jade shatters, the person perishes, irreversible. He instinctively reached his hand toward his neck. Empty, nothing remained. His vision suddenly went dark, his body swayed, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. His face was frighteningly pale. It is because of that jade pendant. But the jade pendant had been thrown out the window by his own hand several days ago. No, he didn't throw it. He had tacitly allowed that person to throw it. He was the one who said, "If you don't like it, just throw it away." These 6 words now burned into his chest, like a branding iron, character by character. He knelt before the bed, grasping my ice-cold hand. "Hengru, rest assured, I will definitely find that jade pendant." With that, he got up and rushed out the door. I floated above, curling my lips, really wanted to tell him, no need to go through all that trouble. The jade pendant was already broken. Finding it would be useless, Zhou Huaijin rushed out of the courtyard, heading straight for the study. The small courtyard outside the study had been cleaned spotlessly. The snow from the past few days had been cleared to the base of the wall, piled into a grayish-white snow wall. He summoned the servants responsible for cleaning and asked urgently, "While cleaning the courtyard these past few days, have you seen a red jade pendant, about this big?" He gestured the size of a thumb. The several servants looked at each other, all shaking their heads. Zhou Huaijin took a deep breath, knelt down and began digging through the piled snow at the wall's base with his bare hands. The attendants wanted to help, but he drove them away. "You don't know what it looks like. What if you miss it? Don't help me, I'll search myself." With that, he sifted through the icy snow inch by inch. His fingers were frozen red, the fingertips gradually losing sensation. When he touched slightly larger chunks of snow, he would carefully break them apart, afraid of missing anything. The snow water soaked the hem of his robe beneath his knees, the cold drilling into his bones through the cracks. He was completely oblivious to it. Once he knelt down, it was for most of the day. The sky darkened. He curled his hands trying to warm them, but his knuckles were already so stiff they could barely bend. Just then, a sound of hurried footsteps came. Batao ran over, her face covered in tear stains. She dropped to her knees before him with a thud. "Young master, I heard our mistress fainted at the ancestral hall. Is it true? She hasn't been feeling well these past few days. She definitely wasn't trying to compete for favor on purpose. You don't need to seal off her entire courtyard because of this." Zhou Huaijin didn't answer. He just blankly turned over the snow in front of him, as if he hadn't heard. "Young master." Only then did he slowly turn his head, his gaze unfocused, as if frozen stupid. "Bai Tao," he recognized her, his voice so hoarse it barely sounded like him. "You've seen that jade pendant on my neck. Come help me look for it. I've been searching for ages. Can't find it." Bai Tao was confused. "Jade pendant. Yes, the one I used to always wear." As he spoke, he continued turning over the snow, not daring to stop the movements of his hands. Batao lowered her head, took out something from her sleeve, and handed it to him. A crack meandered through the middle, and the inside was completely empty. Seeing that touch of crimson red, Zhou Huaijin was beside himself with joy. "This is it. This is the one." He took it with trembling hands, but his fingers were already frozen too stiff to almost feel the pendant's touch. As he carefully examined it in his palm, he suddenly froze. The ashes inside were completely gone, not a speck left. A trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. "Why is it in your hands?" "The madam gave it to me." Batao wiped away her tears. "She told me to pass it to you." In an instant, Zhou Huaijin's entire body stiffened, like being nailed into the snowy ground. Even his breathing stopped. After a long while, He spoke with a trembling voice, as if squeezing it out from deep in his throat. On our wedding night, did Madam come to the study to find me? Baitao nodded. Yes, Madam said you were drunk, so you rested in the study. Zhou Huijin's vision went dark. His knees buckled, and with a thud he knelt back down into the snow. Snow water crept up along his robe, instantly soaking the hem, but he was completely oblivious. He only stared fixedly at the shattered empty pendant in his palm. She had come, on their wedding night, she had come to find him carrying a lantern, and what she saw was him embracing Shu Qingyao on the couch. She saw that jade pendant being thrown out the window. She knelt in the snow, picking up the shattered pendant. She returned to the courtyard alone, her heart aching all through the night, and he knew nothing at all. He even had someone pass along a message, saying he was afraid the smell of alcohol would bother her. How absurd, how laughable. Tears pattered down in large drops, falling onto the broken jade in her palm. How did this jade pendant break? Did Hengru smash it? Baitao shook her head. How could that be? When Madame brought it back, it was already broken. She was sad about it for a long time, muttering something about what a pity. Baitao was only halfway through when she couldn't help but start crying again. Madame has been acting strange these past few days. Young master, please let Madame out. Don't confine her anymore. Her health isn't good to begin with. She still thinks I only fainted, and was confined to my quarters. Zhou Huijin suddenly laughed. It was an ugly laugh. The corners of his mouth pulled open then froze, like a cracked wound. He clutched that broken pendant tightly against his chest. I am the one who harmed her. It was actually me, who harmed her with my own hands. Unable to catch his breath, he collapsed straight into the snow. Baitao screamed for someone to come help him up. After she learned the news that I was no longer among the living, cried until she passed out, woke up and continued crying, passed out again, woke again, cried again, over and over. Who knows how many times. After regaining consciousness, she disregarded all propriety and status, pointed at Zhou Huijin's nose, and scolded him for a full half hour. From his betrayal on their wedding night, to his coldness towards me in the dining hall, to how I haven't eaten a single grain of rice these past few days yet. He never once checked on me. Each matter, each incident, every word dripping with blood and tears. Zhou Huijin said not a word, letting her scold him. His hand clutching tightly the broken jade pendant all the while. Only after Baitao finished scolding, cried herself hoarse and retreated to the side. Did he slowly stand up, he said. Prepare the horse. To Qingyan Temple, the attendant hesitated. Young master, it is already late. The mountain path is treacherous. No horse. He paused, correcting himself. I'll walk up. Back then, in order to beg Master Mingchen to save my life, Zhou Huijin had gone up to Qingyan Temple with one step. One kowtow 3,000 stone steps. He kowtowed 3,000 times, his knees worn bloody and raw. Now, it was the same situation again. He started from the foot of the mountain. With each step he took, he would kneel down, his forehead heavily striking the stone steps. The attendants behind followed from afar, not daring to make a sound. One step, one kowtow. One step, one kowtow. The night wind was bitter. The stone steps were covered with a thin layer of ice. He slipped and fell multiple times, his knees striking the sharp edges, his robe seeping dark red. Yet he didn't even furrow his brow, getting up to continue kowtowing. A full day and night. When the horizon turned fish belly white, he finally arrived at the mountain gate of Qingyan Temple. By now his lips were cracked and bleeding, his eyes staring blankly ahead, his legs trembling so badly he could barely stand. The fabric at his knees had long been worn through, stuck to his skin mixed with blood and flesh. Just as he stepped through the temple gate, a young novice monk came forward and supported him. Who does the benefactor wish to see? Is Master Mingchen here? Is the benefactor surnamed Zhou? Zhou Huijin froze, then nodded. The young novice released his hand, stepped back, put his palms together, and bowed to him. Master Mingchen said, "Today he will not see the benefactor surnamed Zhou." What? Zhou Huijin staggered. Then I'll come again tomorrow. The young novice shook his head. His voice was very soft, like wind chimes on the eaves. He won't see you tomorrow either, nor the day after. He will not see you for the rest of this life. The master left a message. The young novice paused. Word by word, the jade shattered, the person perished, The old wish has dissolved to come kowtowing again, is to force what cannot be. Zhou Huaijin stood frozen in place. His cracked lips trembled, as if trying to smile, but first coughed up a mouthful of sweet blood splattering on the snow. I didn't mean to, that jade pendant broke by accident. I brought both of our hair. He reached out with a trembling hand and pulled out a small brocade pouch from his chest. Inside were 2 locks of hair, carefully wound together with red silk thread. I beg Master Mingchen to help once more, to save her life again, please. The young monk lowered his head and didn't take it. He didn't speak either. He only made a gesture of please, asking him to leave. Zhou Huaijin kept shaking his head, lifting his robe. His knees heavily dropped onto the stone steps again. The worn wounds hit the ground. He groaned, his face deathly pale, yet he bit his teeth and refused to get up. I can't leave. She is still waiting for me to save her. If I leave, she'll truly be gone. I can't accept such an ending. I can't. The young monk let out a deep sigh, bowed to him, and turned to leave. The temple gate slowly closed. Before long, heavy snow poured down from the sky. Goose feather, like snowflakes, whitened the mountain gate, whitened the stone steps, and whitened Zhou Huaijin's hair as well. He knelt before the temple gate, motionless. The regret in his heart seeped into his bones like melted snow, penetrating deeper and deeper, the deeper the more painful. He kept asking himself, why waver between Xu Qingyao and Xu Hengru? Xu Qingyao was spoiled and willful, but she was also the one his young heart had delighted in. Xu Hengru was gentle and calm, never leaving his side for 4 years, even protecting him with her life. But now when he closed his eyes, filling his mind completely impossible to dispel, was entirely Xu Hengru's shadow, her profile with head bowed, as she sewed his clothes in the military tent. The tip of her nose, reddened by cold, as she carried hot soup through wind and snow. The look in her eyes as she turned back to see him, the moment she fell after being struck by the sword. In those eyes, there was no fear, only relief. Relief that she had blocked that strike. In the end, he found himself a reason. His kindness to Xu Qingyao was merely because of little Sui. That was a father's responsibility, but toward Xu Hengru, that was his heart. Only this heart had awakened too late. He didn't even dare to imagine, on their wedding night, what Hengru must have felt when she saw that scene in the study through the window lattice. When the jade pendant was thrown out the window and smashed into the snow, whether she too had shattered along with it. She knelt in the snow picking up that broken pendant, while he remained in the study completely unaware. He had even sent someone with a message saying he feared the smell of alcohol would bother her. How laughable, how despicable, clutching his aching chest. He let out a miserable laugh. His cracked lips split open, the rusty taste of blood spreading through his mouth. Back then, was it this unbearable for you too? He asked in a low voice, his words swallowed by the wind and snow. No one answered. No one could answer. Who knows how much time passed? Maybe half a day, maybe a full day. Zhou Huaijin's consciousness had already begun to blur. Suddenly, a lamp lit up before his eyes. The dim yellow light pierced through the flying snow, shining in front of him. He lifted his head with great effort. Master Mingchen stood before him, dressed in gray-brown monk's robes, hair and beard all white, his expression compassionate and serene. Zhou Huaijin was like a drowning man clutching the last piece of driftwood. He crawled forward 2 steps on his knees, his forehead pressing heavily into the snow. Master, the jade breaking was my fault. It has nothing to do with her. Trembling, he pulled out that brocade pouch from his chest and held it high above his head. The hair is here. I beg you to extend her life again. Whatever the price, I'll gladly pay it. Master Mingchen lowered his eyes and pressed his palms together. Amitabha, this old monk once gave jade, and also gave words. When the jade exists, the person exists. When the jade breaks, the person dies. Benefactor, the karma of this world is like snow in a furnace. It melts early and scatters early. It cannot be forced. Zhou Huaijin suddenly raised his head, his eyes webbed with bloodshot veins. But I only want her to live. A life for a life, my life for hers. Will that work? Master Mingchen remained silent for a long time. Snowflakes fell on his kasaya, then were blown away by the wind. She will live. Zhou Huaijin's entire body trembled, but not in this place. Even if you kneel until the snow melts, you won't be able to wait for her return. Zhou Huijin didn't understand, and was about to kneel again. Master Mingchen reached out his hand and restrained him from a distance. You will see her one more time. But whether you recognize her or not, that all depends on your own fate. This ending is a masterpiece of emotional devastation. After Hengru dies, Huijin's life completely implodes. The maid reveals the evidence Hengru left behind. The sister's kid isn't even his. It was all a scam. Huijin crawls up a freezing mountain on bloody knees, begging the monk to bring Hengru back. He offers his own life for hers, but the monk tells him it is too late. Karma is like snow in a furnace. You can't force it. The monk tells him he will see her one more time, but whether he recognizes her is up to fate. Meanwhile, Hengru is reincarnated into a beautiful, wealthy, loving family. She has no trauma. She is out shopping for hairpins with her bestie, living her absolute best life. Suddenly, a gaunt, crazy-looking beggar grabs her arm on the street. It's Huijin. He stares intensely into her eyes, looking for the woman he destroyed. But then, he lets go. He shakes his head and mutters, "Not her," and he walks away into the snow. Why didn't he recognize her? Because, ladies, he never actually knew her. He only knew the traumatized, submissive version of her that cooked his meals and took swords for him. He didn't recognize a Hengru who was glowing, happy, and unbothered. He walked right past his soulmate because he was looking for a victim, and she was a queen. With that, the master turned and left, the lamplight following him into the distance. The curtain of snow closed in, leaving only a vast expanse of white once more. Zhou Huijin knelt in place, murmuring continuously, "Can see her again. Can see her again. But what does it mean that I won't recognize her? Master." Only an echo, and I floated in midair, also completely confused. "We'll see each other again." I couldn't understand those words either. Zhou Huijin descended the mountain in the night. That appearance was like someone who had lost their soul. Footsteps unsteady, eyes vacant, robes covered in mud, snow, and bloodstains. The attendants followed far behind, not daring to even breathe loudly. When he returned to the heir's residence, he discovered the entire manor was brightly lit. It shouldn't be like this. He had instructed everyone to rest early, and that no one was allowed to make noise, because the coffin was still placed in my courtyard. Yet at this moment, the main hall was bright as day. He strode inside. The Zhou family clan leader, an elderly man with graying hair and beard, was sitting in the seat of honor. His walking stick rested at his side, his face iron dark with anger. Batao stood to one side, eyes red, spine held ramrod straight, and kneeling in the main hall, where Shu Qingyao in disheveled clothing, and an unfamiliar man. The man kept his head lowered, trembling all over, not daring to raise his eyes. Shu Qingyao's hair had come loose and hung down in disarray, her makeup smeared across her face, completely different from her usual gentle and reserved appearance. When the Zhou family clan leader saw Zhou Huijin enter, he slammed his walking stick down hard. "Since you are back, then handle this matter properly. If word of this gets out, I doubt even your position as heir will be secure." With that, the clan leader stormed off in fury. The moment he left, Shu Qingyao crawled forward on her knees and threw herself at Zhou Huijin's legs. "Husband, it is not what they think. I can explain. Just listen to me." Zhou Huijin hadn't opened his mouth yet. Batao stepped forward, her voice not loud, but every word crystal clear. "Secretly bringing a strange man into the estate, caught red-handed. Everyone present saw it with their own eyes. What more is there to explain? A mere servant." Shu Qingyao shrieked, "What right do you have to speak here?" Batao no longer looked at her, turning toward Zhou Huijin, her eyes bloodshot yet unusually calm. "Young master, this is the woman you've been pining for, unable to endure loneliness, secretly bringing a strange man into the estate for adultery. Who knows, that brother Sui might not even be your biological child. For a woman like this, you drove our young miss to her death. Was it worth it?" Those few short sentences, every single word like nails, hammered one by one into Zhou Huijin's heart. His face turned ashen to the extreme, his fists clenching and unclenching. Looking at Shu Qingyao, his gaze no longer held anger, not even disappointment, Only cold indifference remained, as if looking at a complete and utter stranger. You shouldn't have come back. Don't listen to her nonsense. This is a trap she set. She is framing me. Zhou Huijin paid no attention. His gaze shifted, landing on that man. You speak, I only want to hear the truth. That man trembled like a withered leaf in the wind, but Zhou Huijin didn't rush him, just added flatly, hard to say, I've got plenty of ways to make you wish you were dead. Or perhaps it was because his expression was too terrifying at this moment. That man's knees went weak, and he collapsed to the ground, kowtowing frantically like pounding garlic. This humble one was invited by the madam. She said that as long as she got pregnant with another child, she would definitely be able to tie down the heir's heart. This humble one was just taking money to do a job, absolutely did not mean to offend the heir's manner. Zhou Huijin didn't even furrow his brow. He just lowered his eyes to look at Xu Qingyao collapsed on the ground, that gaze as if looking at something already rotten. What about brother Su Qi? Xu Qingyao's pupils sharply contracted. He is yours. Of course he is yours, before she finished speaking. That man seemed to want to atone for his crimes and rushed to speak. This humble one doesn't know if this matter is true or not. But this madam is indeed quite famous outside. A few years ago, there were people saying that she became pregnant after getting intimate with someone. As for whether that child is the heir's bloodline or not, this humble one truly dares not speak recklessly. You, Xu Qingyao trembled all over with rage and raised her hand to hit him, but she was kicked aside by Zhou Huijin. The force wasn't heavy, but it carried bone, deep disgust. He truly never imagined that the person he used to think about constantly would have such a face. For her sake, he had neglected Hengru. For her sake, he had left Hengru alone in an empty room on their wedding night. For her sake, he tacitly allowed the jade pendant to be thrown away. For her sake, he indirectly caused the death of the person who risked their life to protect him. And all of this was nothing but a huge joke. Zhou Huijin slumped powerlessly into the main seat, supporting his forehead with his hand. He was silent for a long time. So long that everyone present became silent as cicadas in winter. Finally, he spoke. His voice was as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Summonin, take these two to the dungeon and keep them under strict guard. That bastard child, remove him from the family registry. After verifying the bloodline, deal with him separately. Xu Qingyao felt as if all her strength had been drained away. She shook her head frantically, trying to crawl over and hug his legs. No, you can't do this to me. Suijer is your child. He really is yours. Two guards lifted her up and dragged her out. Her cries grew fainter and fainter in the corridor, finally cut off completely by a heavy door. Baitao stood in place, her chest heaving violently, tears streaming from her eyes. Finally, she had avenged this grievance for Miss. All of this had been secretly arranged by Miss before she left. Miss left her at the Shu residence, entrusted the estate and token to Auntie, and specifically instructed her to secretly investigate Xu Qingyao's activities over the years. At the time, she thought Miss only wanted to compete for household management rights. Only now did she understand. Miss knew from the very beginning that she wouldn't survive. She wasn't fighting for anything. She was tying up loose ends. In the final days of her life, one by one, she arranged an escape route for everyone. Baitao slowly turned around, not sparing Zhou Huijin a single glance. As she walked out of the main hall, heavy snow was falling. She lifted her head, letting the snowflakes fall on her face. Miss Everything has been taken care of. Within a few days, the Shu family also ran into trouble. Father Shu was implicated in an embezzlement case and stripped of his position. The legitimate mother lost her backing and aged 10 years overnight. Meanwhile, the concubine and Baitao had long since taken the land deeds and savings and moved to settle peacefully in the estate I left behind. Baitao did her best to keep it from the concubine, but on the day of the funeral, the news eventually reached the estate. The newly wedded heir's wife had died. When the concubine heard this news, the teacup in her hand fell and shattered on the ground. She didn't cry. She simply seemed to have all her strength drained away in an instant, leaning against the headboard, having aged several years, clutching Baitao's hand. Her voice trembled. That day when she came to see me, I could tell. Her complexion wasn't right. That wasn't the look of sadness. That was the look of someone making their final arrangements. Baitao didn't know how to respond, only silently shedding tears. The concubine closed her eyes, 2 turbid tears sliding down silently. I could tell, but I didn't stop her. After that, my soul completely dissipated. No pain, no struggle, like a snowflake melting into water, silent and soundless. When I opened my eyes again, the bright sunlight made me squint. I was still in this world. A completely new set of memories flooded into my mind, like a newly opened book. My name is Sue Rowan. Father is a merchant who travels far and wide. Mother is a gentle and soft-spoken woman. Though our family isn't wealthy and noble, we have no worries about food and clothing, and live in harmony and happiness. I have my own boudoir, parents who dote on me, and close friends I grew up with. I was stunned for a long time before I slowly understood. My previous life self had already died, and I never belonged to this world. The place I came from has long become impossible to return to. Perhaps heaven took pity and granted me another life's opportunity, a new identity, a new life. No need to live under someone else's roof anymore. No need to grovel to others anymore. No need to die for anyone anymore. I lay on the embroidered couch, watching the sunlight from outside the window shine in, shining on my brand new clothes. Then, I slowly smiled. 2 blissful months passed. In those 2 months, I felt like I truly came alive. Learning to read account books with father, learning to make pastries with mother, visiting markets with my girlfriends, buying lanterns. Those things from before, like dreams from a past life. Once awakened, they're just gone. That was an ordinary afternoon. I was out on the street picking out hairpins with my close friend. The shop was dazzling with beautiful items, and I was happily making my selections. Suddenly, a hand fiercely grabbed my arm. The grip was extremely strong, and trembling, startled, I turned my head. A person stood before me. He was skin and bones, emaciated to the extreme. His robes were covered in dust, their original color unrecognizable. His hair was disheveled, stubble covered his face, and his cheeks were deeply sunken. Only those eyes, blood, red, crazed, yet revealing an indescribable sorrow. He stared intently at my face, as if trying to see right through me. Me heart suddenly skipped a beat, but only once. He examined me carefully for a long while, then slowly released his hand. He shook his head. Number, not my Hengru, not her, he muttered, staggering as he turned and left. His gaunt figure was swallowed by the crowd. I recognized him, but he didn't recognize me. Master Mingchen was indeed right. You'll be able to see her one more time, but whether you recognize her or not depends entirely on your own fate. His fate was probably only enough to see me one more time, but not enough to recognize me. My close friend was startled and kept patting my arm. Ruwa Wan, that lunatic didn't hurt you, did he? I snapped back to my senses and shook my head with a smile. It is fine, just a pitiful person who mistook me for someone else. After saying that, I turned around and continued looking at the hairpins. I picked one inlaid with jade, checked it against the bronze mirror, and smiled with my eyes squinted. This one, it looks great. My close friend also laughed, and the 2 of us left the shop arm in arm, hopping and skipping. Behind us, at the end of the long street, the snow began to fall again, fluttering down, landing on others' shoulders, no longer any of my concern. Let's take a deep breath, ladies, because this story hits so incredibly hard. At its core, Hengru's journey is a terrifying warning about the sacrificial wife's trap. How many times have we as women been taught that love equals suffering? We are told that if we just endure enough, forgive enough, and sacrifice enough of our own energy, the man will eventually wake up and realize our value. Hengru gave up everything. She gave up her chance to return to her own world. She cooked his meals, managed his home, and literally stepped in front of a blade for him. And what did he say about her behind her back? Just a concubine's daughter dependent on me, hardly worth mentioning. He didn't value her because she made herself too easy to take for granted. He loved the convenience of her, but he didn't respect the humanity of her. It wasn't until she was a cold body in his arms that he suddenly realized she was the foundation holding his entire life together. But here is the beautiful part. Hengru's story doesn't end in tragedy. It ends in liberation. When she reincarnates as Sue Rowan, she gets the life she always deserved. A life where she is cherished, just for existing, not for what she can do for a man. She didn't need to suffer to be worthy of love. When Huaijin grabs her arm on that snowy street and then walks away, it is the ultimate closure. He is trapped in a hell of his own making, chained to his regrets, while she is literally picking out shiny hairpins, completely detached from his drama. The opposite of love isn't hate, it is absolute peaceful indifference. Now, I want to turn this over to you, because I know we have all survived our own versions of Zhou Huaijin. Imagine you are Hengru in that final scene. You are happy, healed, and glowing. The man who destroyed you grabs your arm on the street, looks into your eyes, and doesn't recognize the radiant woman you've become. If you had a split second to make a choice, what would you do? Would you lean in and whisper one final, devastating sentence to let him know exactly who you are and what he lost? Or is the ultimate flex just smiling politely, like he's a crazy stranger, and walking away to buy your jewelry? Be honest with me. Drop your answers in the comments below. Have you ever had an ex walk past the upgraded version of you? Let's celebrate those glow-ups in the comments. If Hengru's journey from sacrificial lamb to unbothered queen resonated with you today, share this video with a friend who needs a reminder to stop bleeding for men who won't even buy them a band. Aid, I am Liyue. Keep your jade pendants safe and your standards high. I'll see you in the next one.